Autoline Daily is brought to you by Bridgestone, passion for excellence.
Here are today's top headlines. GM picks a U.S. plant for a car that was supposed to be built in China. VW is buying part of Suzuki. And California is mandating reflective glass in cars. Up next, we'll be back with the news behind the headlines. This is Autoline Daily for Friday, June 26, 2009, and now the news. The Detroit News reports GM picked its Orion Township assembly plant as the place to build its new small car. The UAW had objected to GM importing those cars from China, so the states of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Tennessee were in a three-way fight to have that car, presumably a Chevrolet Spark, built at a plant in their state. GM picked the Orion plant in Michigan. Now, I'm not going to say this is why they picked that plant, but GM CEO Fritz Henderson went to Lake Orion High School, which is just a couple of miles from the plant. But all that may go for naught if GM is not allowed to quickly take its good assets out of bankruptcy. GM says if it doesn't happen soon, it's going to force many of its suppliers to go out of business. GM has stopped production at most of its plants in the U.S. to reduce inventory. But Reuters reports it wants to restart most of those plants by July 13th. Two of GM's smaller unions, the International Union of Electrical Workers and the United Steelworkers, as well as several states, have objected to the sale of assets of the so-called old GM. And hot on the heels of that development, Chrysler is suing its supplier TRW for not shipping parts. Chrysler says it cannot resume production until it gets those parts. Bloomberg reports that when it called TRW for comment, the company was not even aware of the lawsuit, but claims that Chrysler owes it more money than what Chrysler says it does. Yesterday, the California Air Resources Board adopted a regulation requiring that by 2012, new cars sold in California must have glass that reflects or absorbs rays from the sun. The idea is this will keep vehicles cooler and drivers will not have to use their air conditioning as much. That'll save fuel and cut CO2 emissions. Vehicles that comply with the standard will block about 33% more of the sun's rays than vehicles that don't. They say interiors can stay up to 14 degrees cooler. Earlier this week, Akio Toyoda was officially named the new president of Toyota and hasn't wasted any time making his mark. According to Reuters, the new boss says he doesn't see the industry recovering for 2 years, and because of that, he's going to take a 30% pay cut to help save costs. And Akio has already reshaped the company's North American operations to help give management more autonomy. According to the Detroit News, a former sales chief for Toyota, Yoshimi Inaba, will take over as president of North America and also takes over as chairman of Toyota Motor Sales. Inaba will report to Atsushi Nimi, who will oversee all North American operations. Toyota is making similar changes in all regions of the globe. A very interesting report here. Volkswagen is considering taking a small stake in Suzuki, a company that GM used to have a stake in. According to Reuters, VW would like to take a 10% stake in Suzuki so it can have access to its micro cars. The cars would be a segment below VW's upcoming vehicle based on the Up concept. And coming up next, a preview of this week's episode of Autoline Detroit. We'll be back right after this.
Changing tires out here could be dangerous, but with these tires, I don't need to worry.
Bridgestone.
Joining me on this week's edition of Autoline are Michelle Krebs from Edmunds.com, Daniel Howes of the Detroit News, and Sean McElinden from the Center for Automotive Research. In the following preview, we talk about GM and Chrysler's recent dealership closings and where we think the U.S. market is headed in the future.
You hear stories of 5 Chevy dealers in a city. They're fighting with each other for customers, and they're trying to undercut them in price
instead of competing with Toyota.
Right, and then that over time, all that does is tarnish the brand.
There were Chrysler dealers that haven't sold a new car in years and expected their allocation of off-lease and rental fleet cars for used car sales, and they wouldn't go away. The company got absolutely nothing from them.
But I got to believe that Chrysler and General Motors are going to lose market share in this. I don't see how you can broom out these many dealers, and in GM's case, 4 brands go by the wayside.
And the uncertainty, and I think one of the flaws in GM's business plan that's been submitted is they're expecting higher market share. That makes no sense to me whatsoever.
No.
I agree with that. I think, we're clearly moving into, this is going to look very much like Western Europe.
Exactly.
Where the biggest player, when I used to look at these numbers, was about 18% of Volkswagen.
Volkswagen.
All right in together.
And then you had, the French in around 15, and then you get into the high single digits and the low double digits, and that's the way it plays.
It's a Western European market coming here.
That's what's coming here.
One slightly dominant player, and then 6 or 7 guys at 7 or 8%.
As always, you can watch the entire episode of Autoline and a whole lot more on our website this afternoon. Anyway, that does it for this show, except that I have to announce the winner of this week's trivia contest. We challenged you to tell us which executive recently said, "I don't know anything about cars. A business is a business, and I think I can learn about cars." And the correct answer is Edward E. Whitaker Jr., the new chairman of General Motors. And the lucky winner this week is Jonathan Worf of Atkinson, New Hampshire. Congratulations, John. You just won a super cool David Kimball drawing of a 6.6-liter GM Duramax diesel engine. And that is it for today's broadcast. But if you like what you saw, make sure you swing by our website and check out some of our other content. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Visit our website for even more great content all week long. Autoline Extra, Dawn's Journal, podcasts, and even more. So click over and get the inside view at AutolineDetroit.tv.